Okay. Hi, Alex and Gerta. Welcome to the show.
Hi,
Hello, how's
thanks
it
for
going?
having us.
Okay, so for new listeners, Gerta, you've been on the show before. Alex, this is your first time. Welcome. But for the listeners who maybe don't remember our last episode, which I am going to put in the show notes because last time you came on the show, we talked about some really important do's and don'ts for salary negotiations, and it was a super popular episode. So I'll make sure to link to that. But tell people who you are, maybe what you've been up to since the last episode, and then Alex, of course, let us know, listeners know who you are.
Yeah, thanks for having me again, Lauren. It's so great to be here. I am a negotiations expert, and I'm the co-founder together with Alex of yournegotiations.com. I'm actually representing with my shirt here if you're watching the video. It's been an interesting journey to get here. I'm originally from Albania. I moved to the US, studied math and logistics engineering at MIT, and then worked in all tech like biotech, tech, salary.com, LinkedIn. I started various startups. I've worked in venture capital. It's been such an interesting journey. And then all of a sudden, everything made sense when we're like, we should start a negotiations company. That's our and we've seen negotiations in many different industries and settings. So we're a great fit for this. And this is how we're here.
Amazing. And Alex, tell us a little bit about what you do and your journey to yournegotiations.com.
Yeah, of course. Thanks so much for having us again. So I'm the co-founder of yournegotiations.com, Gerta's co-founder and also husband. People sometimes don't realize that we're married, and we've sometimes gotten confused looks when we take very late night calls together. They're like, "Hey, what's what's going on there?" But for myself, I started my career actually in the military. Went to the Air Force Academy for undergrad. Was active duty Air Force for 5 years. I got out of the military and I went to graduate school at Wharton Business School as well as Harvard Kennedy School to transition to a career in the private sector. And after graduate school, I started a career in tech. So we moved out to San Francisco. I've worked from big tech all the way to small hypergrowth startups. So I was at Instagram as well as other Series C companies working in product marketing. And so for myself, in terms of negotiations, I mean, a couple of things. I've always been entrepreneurial. I feel like even throughout my career, when I was in the military, I actually started a startup. And also in graduate school, I took some negotiations courses from very, very renowned professors, and that actually really piqued my interest. Some of these negotiations courses really centered around diplomacy, geopolitics, and kind of negotiating in that sort of space. But it's a lot of this is can also be transferable, and these principles can be applied towards job negotiations as well. Yeah, and that's kind of how we got into it. Gerta and I, just having had a passion for this, we've always we felt that there's a real opportunity for us to get into this business.
I love that you have negotiation experience for like diplomacy because we're talking about job negotiations. And while the stakes do feel equally as high, especially when you are negotiating for yourself and your career, it's really interesting because they're different but similar. Like there's some negotiation principles that are sort of similar throughout. At the end of the day, you're trying to ask for something that you want and get it, right? So, but that's really, really interesting and a unique perspective to bring to a salary negotiation. And I think that the listeners are probably very curious about the one trait, given the title of the episode is the one trait that makes you a good employee, but a bad negotiator. So I would love for you guys, like, let's just get right to it. What is this one trait that makes you a good employee, but not the best at negotiation?
Yeah, as we were working with clients, we've had this company for a couple of years now, and it's been like, probably a decade where I help people with job negotiations, and I keep observing like, why are these big high achievers, very well educated people? There's something there that's they're not good negotiators. What's going on? And they have access to, all the books and all the ways to learn. And I finally observed, and actually it helped with having Alex, sort of near me. He was a product marketing manager at Instagram, and he was so excellent, always overperforming. And I noticed that he was such an over communicator. Like you have to align all the cross-functional partners, and you were constantly repeating things or telling things to everyone. And then in when I would work with clients, I would notice they would overshare. So like, oh, this is the salary I want, and also like I'm planning, I want to, I want to move to Bali in a year or two, and I also want to have a kid soon. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you cannot say any of that in a and then I realized that, oh, these high performers, they are used to over communicating because that's what makes you so good at your job, making sure everyone's aligned. But you can't bring that into negotiations because if you overshare, you're losing leverage. And so that's the trait, over communicating.
And one thing I'll add here too, just having with my military background, I actually was talking to a potential client yesterday. He's a fighter pilot, Top Gun graduate, and we were talking about negotiations. And even in the military context too, you absolutely need to keep everyone involved in the project informed on what's going on because lives literally depend on it. So depending on your industry, negotiations can come in it can be not natural for you to engage in a productive way where it was very important for your job.
Absolutely. I relate to this a lot. My first salary negotiation was a complete disaster for this exact reason. And I think because asking for money can feel very uncomfortable, even though it shouldn't. I know that's a whole other episode, but you have this tendency to want to fill the space, right? Like you're uncomfortable. So you're like, I'm going to keep talking until this person responds, but you don't really give them an opportunity for a response. So you just keep going. I remember, like, I used to tell people, ask for what you want and then stop talking. And the stop talking part used to be the hardest part of the whole piece of advice. So
Yeah.
I completely agree. It does not feel natural, especially when you are asking for more money. Whereas, like, on a project, you're like, this person expects, me to give them too much information. Which is like a whole other conversation about like maybe over communicating. There's a whole episode about like how to. I remember there's this great acronym from the military called bottom line up front. So you communicate by giving your bottom. You probably Alex is nodding his head, yes. But again, that's like a communication tip. What were you gonna say, Gerta?
Don't do that in negotiations. Yeah, I was gonna add definitely like tech, tech high performers and military people, we see this come up a lot, the over communication. But I also see lawyers, which is very surprising at first. I think lawyers are also, again, surprisingly giving away a lot of leverage in communications. And if I had to guess, it's probably like they have to follow the letter of the law. And it's like a lot of my lawyer clients say, well, they asked me what my preferred salary is. I have to give it to them, right? No. Yeah.
Totally. Okay, so besides over communication, what other common mistakes do you see people make, especially when it comes to salary negotiation in a job offer or even salary negotiation in their current job and they're just trying to get to the next step?
There's so much we could go into. I mean, every do can be turned into a don't, in a way. So I think one of the bigger ones is not showing excitement. So a lot of people, again, with the current hiring environment, it's a very tough market. It's an employer's market. On the other hand, like a lot of our clients, they come from incredible backgrounds. They have amazing resumes and they have a bit of ego around it. And they're like, we're being lowballed. They were getting offers that are lower in title, lower in level, lower in compensation by a lot compared to where they were before. And so there's a bit of ego involved. It's like, how dare they? And we always recommend like stay very professional, stay very cordial, give the other party the benefit of the doubt, and also show excitement about the role and the opportunity, because people want to work with people who are excited to be there. Like companies want to hire people who are excited, not people who are playing hard to get or like I'm too good for you type of thing. So those are some things that come to mind.
Yeah, and I'll add here too, that excitement piece is so important because we've sometimes had people actually kind of push back or question, well, if I show too much excitement, doesn't that actually make me seem desperate for the job and give away my leverage? But from a negotiations perspective, the best thing you can do is to give the company confidence that if they are to go through all the work to get to the written offer stage and choose you as their candidate, that there's a realistic chance that you'll accept the job. So the best way you can show that is to continue to reinforce that genuinely reinforce that you're excited about the role, that you and sharing the reasons why you're a good fit, and really showing them that if they're to hire you, you'd be a great employee.
And
Yeah, and I
yeah, sorry.
go for it.
I was going to add that the side benefit to showing excitement is that it softens your ask. So our approach is for you to ask multiple times. It's a marathon and not a sprint, a negotiation. And so as you're showing excitement and being very gentle and professional and cordial, you're softening those asks. Imagine asking multiple times, but in a kind of standoffish way. That's not as impactful as asking in a excited way.
So can we walk through that framework of asking multiple times? What does that look like? Because I imagine someone who's listening to this is like, okay, asking once is already uncomfortable. Asking multiple times feels very cringeworthy. And then also, where does intentional silence fit into that framework?
Yeah, that's a great question. Basically, well, by the way, because you're right, the process gets so uncomfortable as it goes on. I feel like half our jobs is to become therapists to our clients. I sometimes share screenshots having removed like personal identifiable information, but my clients is being like, "How do you do this every day? This is so stressful." So the process is ideally you want to get a written offer before you negotiate. Now, a lot of companies have found ways around that. And they also have, especially if they have so much leverage, like big tech, at least Google and Meta, and I want to say Amazon, they just don't give written offers until you've negotiated upfront. And if you ask for it, they'll just send you either in the body of an email or some sort of document where you can't sign, which is not officially an offer letter. So ideally, you want to get the written offer and then negotiate, but you can still negotiate before that. And what you do is after you've reached the point where, okay, now it's time to negotiate, you ask in an open-ended way. And this is very key. You don't, because a lot of people come to us, they're like, oh, you probably have so much data and, help me give a counter offer. We can never know a company's true budget unless you have insider information, which is an edge case. We can never know because they have their own internal reasons why they pay below or above market. And because we can never know, it doesn't make sense to make a counter offer because your counter offer could come in lower than the top of their budget, which means then they can give you that and then you leave money on the table. Or it could come above top of their budget and now you may turn them off. They might think you don't really understand or you're too entitled of more money than they could give you. And so I don't recommend giving a counter offer. And side note, this is also the reason why I actually don't recommend doing much market research. It's not the best use of your time. The data to begin with is not very accurate out there. The data we have access to, which is free. But also, even if it weren't, a company can still pay above or below market.
And we as job seekers.
Alex and I, we do have access to like real market data that you pay for. It's very expensive and all that, but it doesn't really make a difference as I already outlined. And so the process is you ask for more money in a very open-ended way. They come back with something. It's a dance. And so they come back with something. Then you ask again. And then they come back with something. And the pause is, I've noticed this, a lot of companies do it, especially in this tough hiring environment. When you ask, they get on a call with you, and then maybe like they're like, okay, let me see what I can do. And then they don't respond for like hours or days. And that's when you're freaking out. And that's when it's best not to freak out and let the silence sit there. Or sit with the silence. And that's very key. And that's when I'm in the background texting with all my clients, getting all the calls, like, I'm freaking out. What do I do? I'm like, it's okay. It's part of the process. You did nothing wrong. You were very cordial and professional. It would be an overreaction if they pull the offer just because you asked for more. And that's where the silence comes in.
And I'd like to add two things. One thing about that market research piece, we do get people kind of questioning, like, well, isn't it important to know the general salary ranges and kind of understanding what I should be paid based on my experience? One thing to add is, let's say, assume that you actually found the perfect data, the correct numbers as to how much exactly you should be paid. If you bring that to the table in the conversation, every company has a response that basically just sort of invalidates it. They'll say, hey, Lauren, thank you so much for doing that research and sharing those numbers. Here at our company, we have a unique compensation philosophy where we look at candidates holistically, all these things. And then so all that research that you did, it actually doesn't even factor in, or they don't really, they don't actually count it as a valid argument. So that's why it's generally good to look at numbers just to get overall data points, but you don't really have to go too deep into and spend too much time doing that. The other thing too is in terms of making multiple asks, the first thing you want to make sure you understand is your own priorities. So you want to think through, well, what's most important to me even before you get into the negotiations? Do I care about cash? Am I really focused on equity? Are there benefits or certain aspects of the job, work-life flexibility? You want to understand what these priorities are and then see which of these are non-negotiables. Like, if I don't get this, I will walk away. That way, when you actually start making the asks, you know what you should be asking for first, kind of putting your, I guess, negotiation capital in terms of like how much weight do I put on this ask towards those things. That'll also help determine how many times you ask and what you ask for in each of those steps.
Okay, so just to make sure I'm following, a lot of times recruiters in your first initial call will either ask you what is your salary expectation, or they've already listed a range, or they already have a number and they're just going to tell you the number and they want to make sure, are you on board with this number or not? So let's say in the initial call, they're like, hey, Lauren, this role pays $100,000. Is that acceptable? Like, do you want to continue in the conversation? So what if you're like, okay, $100,000 is not acceptable. I really want 120. So there is, it's not super far away, but it's far enough away that we need to have multiple conversations. Isn't it then weird to, three conversations later, after you've already said yes to 100, come back and be like, actually, I want 120. And I know you're probably going to be like, but you can say you've learned about the role, you've done all this other stuff. That's true, but it still feels like there would be this initial pushback of like, but you were okay with 100. So what would you do in that situation?
Yeah, absolutely. We would strongly recommend to not say yes to the 100. There are ways to dance around it. And the main one is, I'm sure you'll pay fairly. I just want to focus on the role right now and make sure it's a mutually good fit. We can discuss compensation at a later point. And there's different variations of that where you're not saying yes up front and you negotiate later on. You need to be a little comfortable with kind of dodging multiple times because, again, in this environment, we're seeing very aggressive companies. And so you might be cornered and pressured to give an answer, but you need to be comfortable with yourself to just kind of dance around it. And when I have been in this position myself, where I was dodging the question, I pretty much always the recruiter would start laughing eventually because they're like, okay, you know the game, I'm not getting an answer out of you. And it was like, okay, we're playing a game. I'm just gonna figure out a way to not answer this. And they were, they started laughing like, okay, moving on. But even if, yeah, you can simply say like, I'm sure you'll pay fairly. We can discuss it at another point. Or you can say, I'm still expecting other offers, so I can let you know as they come in, where they stand compared to your offer and your budget, and we can have a discussion at a later point.
And another thing too is you can actually turn it around on them. So when they ask you for your salary expectations, you can say, "Oh, thank you so much for asking. I'm actually curious. This will just help me with all the opportunities I'm looking at. I'm curious what your budget for the role is." And so just try to make it a two-way conversation as well. It's not always they ask you and you just need to give them the information that they asked at that time.
Yes.
And that's another thing to think about too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think especially in this tough job market, there's a feeling of like, I don't really, as a job seeker, I don't really have the right to push back, or I need to be very careful about how much I push back because there's five other people in line, right? And so I can understand why, the mental and emotional piece of this for job seekers is really hard because even though, maybe we want to do what you're suggesting, which is like not accept a number or not share a number right away, when they are very aggressively pushing you, it feels like if you don't say something or if you don't agree with it, they're going to move to the next person. I guess like, and obviously this is a big part of your job. You said that you're like part therapist. How do you help people kind of manage that part? Because it's scary. It's fear that's essentially popping up.
Yeah, I think what helps is we try to reframe their mindset, which is not negotiating might be a little bit of a flag for the company. Like negotiating is such a common thing to do in business. And the first offer is almost never the best offer. And for you to simply take the first thing, it would question a little bit your candidacy and like your business skill sets and all that. So when we frame it that way, like also everyone else is negotiating. I think that actually really helps in terms of mindset.
Yeah, the other thing too, and this is just good job search practice, is you should always be applying to multiple roles. So it's a lot more productive. It'll help you find a job faster. But from a negotiations perspective, it actually shows you because when you apply for multiple places, some of those will probably go well. Others you may end up dropping off. But if you have multiple places that are going well, it actually shows you your own value. So you don't feel like you put all your eggs in one basket. And once you start negotiating, it feels so high stakes that you need to make that work. You as a job seeker should just remember, look, multiple places want me. I bring a lot of value, and that'll actually help kind of bolster your own confidence.
Yeah, like the best leverage you have is that you have other opportunities. You're not putting all your eggs in this basket, right?
Yes, with an asterisk that the best leverage is if you have other opportunities and you haven't overshared anything about your preferences, personal life, or the other opportunities. So if you, and I can give an example later on, I think we'll
Yeah,
get
no,
to.
I'd love an example.
Yeah, basically,
We have so many actually. Yeah.
we had a client that a while ago, and I'm kind of sanitizing the information. So she had an offer from a healthcare startup and TikTok, and she was so excited to tell each of these companies that I have another offer from them. She was ready to tell, and we jump on a call together. I'm like, oh my gosh, don't tell them. They're like, why? And like, getting an offer from TikTok is so impressive, and also have another offer like a healthcare startup. So here's why. If you go to the healthcare startup and you say I have another offer from TikTok, you're sharing the company. TikTok pays top of market. Like pretty much only top tech companies pay similar to TikTok. No one else pays that good, that well. So a healthcare startup, very early stage, can never compete with that. What they can compete on is mission. And so they're like, if you're looking for money, we can never compete with TikTok. We're not even going to try to increase your initial offer because we just cannot get there. But we compete on mission, and so take it or leave it. And similarly, if you go to TikTok and you say, I have an offer from a healthcare startup, they know they pay top of market. And they're like, okay, well, it's not from Instagram or whoever TikTok's competitors are. So then I'm not trying to, you're not going to be stolen away as a talent from my competitors. This is this is a healthcare startup. So then I'm not even going to try to give you more money. And we were TikTok. This is the mission we have. We can't compete on mission either. And so now by having shared who your offers are from, you're not getting an updated offer, an increased offer, because they know who the other is. On the other hand, if the healthcare startup thinks your other offer is from another healthcare startup, now they're competing with the market for you. Again, we don't want to lie, but by you not telling who the other offer is from, they don't know, and so they can assume, maybe, what if it's from another healthcare startup? Similarly for TikTok, what if it's from Instagram or Snapchat? I don't know who the competitors are, YouTube. And so then it's like, okay, TikTok might increase their offer to take you away from the competitors.
So basically, you can share that you have another offer, just don't share the details of who it's from, the offer details. And I will say, as a previous recruiter, we used to always ask that. We'd be like, who's your offer from? What are the details? And we would write everything down so that we had the data. So I can share just from the insider point of view. It does not, it's that information is to help you, but do not share it. Yeah, so agree with that.
Yeah, yeah. And actually, it's interesting that you went through, like, don't share who it's from, don't share how much it is. One other dimension we don't want to share is even industry. So, for example, we had a client who had an offer from Google and went to Google and said, I have another offer. They're like, who's it from? Oh, I can't, I'd rather not share, but it's from an AI company, and already gave away so much of their leverage because now Google knows it's not a top tech company. We don't refer to other top tech companies as AI companies. It's usually smaller companies that we refer to as AI companies. So something that seems so innocent and so small, you're like, I didn't share anything. I just shared the broader industry. You already gave away so much leverage. And that's why we're there with our clients to handhold them throughout this process. So because it's so easy to give away leverage without even knowing.
Okay, so Alex, if you could recap, your top three pieces or 3 to 5 pieces of negotiation advice for someone who's going on the hunt or about to enter a negotiation, what would you say are the top 3 to 5 tips? And if you can put them in an order, that's even better.
Yes. Yep, absolutely. So the first thing is to not share your number or your range when you're asked. So tactfully deflect that. A good way of doing that is to say, I'm very focused on exploring that this is a mutually good fit. We can chat numbers later. The second thing is to always show excitement and enthusiasm for the role. 2 things here. You want to give a company confidence that there's a realistic chance that you'll accept the offer. If they feel like then they can actually close you, they're more willing to negotiate with you. As well as companies want to hire people who are excited to be there. That means you'll be motivated, you'll be a pleasant coworker to deal with, you'll do your best work and on ramp quickly. And the third thing is what we just covered, which is you definitely want every company to know that you're interviewing with multiple places. If you get an offer from another place, tell all those companies you got an offer. But with that said, do not share any information or details about what those other opportunities are, what role, what company, even the industry, if you can avoid it.
Amazing. This has been incredibly helpful. Tell us as we wrap up, like give us a quick brief information about yournegotiations.com and kind of the resources and tools that you guys have available to help people.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find all the information about us and what we do on our website, which is yournegotiations.com. And we also have a newsletter if for those who want free tips. We send it out every week. So all of that info is on our site. Is there anything else specific?
LinkedIn, we're both starting to post a lot more on LinkedIn. And we promise we don't try to try to go viral in a weird way, like in a, manufactured way. We stand by what we shared there fully.
Amazing. Well, I will put all of your information to yournegotiations.com in the show notes. I'll also link to our past episode about the do's and don'ts for salary negotiation because it almost feels like no matter how many times you've done this or you think about it, when you're in the moment, it's really nice to have the support. So, Alex and Gerta, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you, Lauren.